We are live. Talking about height and weight.
Hmm.
Yeah, I weighed. I probably right now I weigh 185 pounds. That's what I weighed. Well, look at that, double thumbs up as I said that this morning. Um, but they say I once so they did a study, and the way people put on weight is that it's not because people say, "Oh man, I gained 5 pounds at Christmas time." That's not actually how it happens. What happens is over the course of a year, especially starting in your mid 20s, you put on 2, 3, maybe 4 pounds a year. You don't even, that's not even enough to notice. But 10 years later, you're 30 pounds heavier. And you're like, how did
Hmm.
this happen? And that's generally how people put on weight. How old was I in 2008? Uh, probably 42, around there, around 40, 42. I was like I say, I weigh 185 now. It's probably 215 then. So I put on 30 pounds over, 10 years or whatever, 15 years. So that's when I decided to lose the weight. And I ended up going back down to, I usually keep it between 180 and 185. Only because in high school, um, there's Wilson. In high school, I also reached my full height in the ninth grade. 5'11", though I think I'm down to 5'10 and a half now because you shrink as you get older. I haven't measured myself in a while. Uh, and I was probably 165 pounds. So I had to lift a lot of weights when I was 18, 19, and 20 to get up to 185. So I'm like, no, I can't now get down. I don't want to be in the 170s. I'll stop at 180. So that's what I did when I lost weight, back in, I don't even know when it was, 2007, 2008, when finally had to decide to lose some weight because I was 30 pounds heavier.
Hmm.
Thanks to life.
Yeah. I think if I exercised, even then I wouldn't be. I wouldn't go under 190 because
Oh,
I really have dense bones.
I I exercised and still went up in weight over that 10 or 15
Hmm.
years. Exercise, rode my bike, lifted weights. I would always go, oh yeah, I'm putting on more bulk. I must be, no, was not
But were
muscle
you
mass.
were you eating a lot of protein?
I don't remember. I was eating cookies. I was eating whatever I wanted.
Okay, that shouldn't be build muscle mass.
No, it was building fat mass. That's what it was doing.
Well, no, you were exercising.
Yeah. Good evening, Tid
If,
Cobbler.
if you don't exercise, the sugar turns to fat.
It's unless you're an Olympic swimmer or an offensive lineman with the NFL, it's really easy. Oh, more balloons. It's really easy to out eat any exercise program.
Hmm.
That's the way it goes. And how are you this week, Wilson?
I'm doing all right. Just just trying to get organized. I was going to attempt to be at my art desk and draw, but I was not able to figure out how to get the camera. I could
Ah,
get the camera over there, but there was no way for me to like just talk to the camera and not see you guys. That
ah.
would just be way too much for me. So I was like, you know what? Let me just keep everything here at the computer desk, and I'll just bring my portable easel and I'll work on that while we're
You're doing some more
talking.
sketch cards?
Yes, I'm working on some more Transformers sketch cards um, that that are needed. So,
Ah.
so keeping busy that way. But I did get to go to the comic book shop today.
All
I
right.
I had a doctor's appointment, a regular checkup, and like, well, since I'm out, I might as well just jump on the train, go get some books, and come back. So I got some books. So I'm prepared for tonight. And Marvel is celebrating its 85th anniversary,
I saw something.
and I
Hmm.
saw a video on it, and it got me angry.
It got you angry?
It got me for no reason. Because, okay, so let's go with the fact that when I was collecting comics, I remember the celebration of Marvel's 25 years. 55 years have not passed. Because the numbers are not adding up. So, and I understand that they had switched over to adding timely comics as part of the celebration a while back. I don't know exactly when that happened, but at some point they decided this would be a milestone from timely. Okay, fine. They're playing with numbers at this point.
I think it was around the 65th anniversary.
Probably. Because it's like, again, I remember celebrating the 25th, and then all of a sudden, way too many years went by.
You got mad because of that question I asked on Facebook this week about Thor. That must have been, you were already wound up.
That might be that might have added fuel to the flame.
Paolo, on Facebook, it just struck me like last weekend that you know how Marvel has legacy numbering on books, and I forget who it was showing off they had got the latest issue of Thor, legacy number 759 or something, and I said to myself, and then I wrote it on Facebook. I wonder if Marvel counts the first 82 issues of Journey into Mystery in the Thor numbering that Thor did not appear in.
They do. They always did.
Well, they always counted it. But I'm just saying, when you go to legacy numbering, you don't have to. You could legacy numbering is any number you suppose any supposed number of comics you're supposed to appear. Like the Deadpool legacy numbering is every Deadpool miniseries and stuff. They didn't count 25 issues of something Deadpool never appeared in. That was their opportunity to say this is really legacy number and give but they didn't.
No, but there's one thing that I noticed that well, I think I told a couple of people, but nobody really cared. The first time that Marvel did legacy numbering, they did it with Thor. They did count the early Journey into Mysteries, but it did not count the post-Onslaught Journey into Mystery, because Thor became Journey into Mystery with the Lost Gods, except for the last year where they started having mini series within a series. But the thing is, Journey into Mystery is finally canceled with the old numbering, and Thor #1 begins the next month. And because it had the Lost Gods, it was tangentially related, pretty much related to Thor anyway. So when they did the original legacy numbering, they should have counted with those issues, and they didn't.
Why not? They have more relation to Thor than the first 82 of the first volume of Journey. And the legacy numbering started with Joe Quesada on Daredevil, writing it in his signature. Did you know that? When he and Jimmy were doing Marvel Knights, and he would draw a cover for Daredevil, he would put what number that would have been in with his signature. And that's actually where Marvel's legacy numbering comes from.
So should Spider-Man's legacy numbering count all of the magazines as one?
Should it count Amazing Fantasy 1 through 14?
But it doesn't, because they do start the legacy numbering from Amazing Spider-Man #1.
Right.
Although if you add up all of the Amazing Spider-Man and all the Spectacular Spider-Man and all of the Web of Spider-Man and the Adjectiveless and the Sensational and the whatever, that adds up to what, 2,000? We could say that Spider-Man was a weekly comic.
Right. And then do you count Amazing Fantasy 16, which where they snuck that in at one point, and then you have the -1s.
There's no vice president in charge of legacy numbering. There's the problem.
Yeah. Well, that Amazing Fantasy is a 3-issue miniseries numbered 16 to 18.
Right. Can't even end on a solid number of 20. And then, so that I completely forgot about that Journey into Mystery. Completely forgot about it. So I'm watching this video. Oh, Marvel 85th anniversary. All right, fine. They're counting timely, whatever. You watch that video. All that video told me was, oh, Marvel Entertainment is celebrating 85 years of making movies based on the ideas of one writer and two artists. That's what I got from that little trailer.
Of course.
That's where it bothered me. There was one image that showed you some comic books. Then they show you Stan, of course. We all know that he's going to be shown no matter what.
Yep.
They credit Jack, and surprisingly, they credit Steve.
Mm-hmm.
All people who were there, they credit the bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the original bullpen concept, the House of Ideas,
which didn't really exist.
the House of Ideas, and the rest of the video celebrating 85 years of Marvel showed us nothing but 16 years of the MCU. And it's a 1 minute little trailer that's cute. That's fine. But it just irked me to go, okay, what about the rest of the bullpen? At least in name, show us more than just the quick popular covers that are for the MCU. Now, granted, I understand the movie stuff is currently the hot thing. But 85 years, and you're focusing on the last 16. And
focusing on the movies.
And that bothered me immensely. The message that I felt came from that was that the whole Marvel, all of Marvel was created by Stan, Jack, and Steve, and that's it.
And aren't you glad we have these movies?
Yeah. And by the way, here's some movie shots, because that's all you guys are paying attention to. And granted, it is celebrating Marvel Entertainment, not Marvel Comics. And that just, that irked me to no end, that it just bothered me immensely.
Well, the company was Marvel Entertainment in 1987.
Yeah.
So
it's not even 85 years of that.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Well, Tit Goblin's telling us there's some good Terminator stuff on Netflix. I've never been that big a Terminator fan.
I'm a fan of Terminator, so I think that should be interesting. I did see the commercials. Netflix has been doing a pretty good job with animation stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've been enjoying a lot of their animation stuff. So I am curious on what they're going to be doing with Terminator.
What were you saying, Paolo?
Well, one thing that I wanted to bring up is that with the change from the first time they celebrated the 25 years of Marvel, because they started on Fantastic Four #1.
Right.
Let's not forget the 10-year covers too, which we're the only ones who know about.
Yeah, but there's a problem. Fantastic Four #1 was not published by Marvel Comics. It was published by 20th Century Publishing Corporation or something. one of several.
Some randomly named Martin Goodman company.
Yeah, for bookkeeping purposes.
Yeah.
But even in terms of branding, do you know which word does not appear in Fantastic Four #1 anywhere on any part that could be considered editorial, or including the cover? Marvel. There's no Marvel on Fantastic Four #1.
Huh.
The first Marvel comic is Amazing Spider-Man #2, and the first Marvel Fantastic Four is #14. The company was still called 20th Century something, and they also had Vista Publications, and there was in the Atlas magazines. I think it was Tugan Kid, which was published by Atlas Magazines in 1964, and that was the thing until 1968 when they finally sold out to the
Cadence. Was that
no, the Perfect? It was still Perfect Film Corporation.
Okay,
and they made money from car parks, I think. No, that was DC. Kenner was a car park.
Then when you had
Cadence?
Cadence, they were mainly the distributor. The Perfect Film was because I think it was because no, I'm not exactly sure what Perfect Film was.
Corporate structure.
But in any case, that's
shady.
when you see a change in the corporate structure is when Martin Goodman sells the magazine management, which is the shell company for all of those little companies that appear in each comic. Is in 1968. There's no change in company structure between pre-Fantastic Four and post-Fantastic Four. All of the other comics which were not superheroes continued to exist for several years. In fact, merely the model continued to exist almost into the mid-70s. It was the last Western was Two Gun Kid, I think, which went all the way to 1979. And that also predates all the superheroes. Not only that, the start of Timely is irrelevant precisely because of the shell companies, because Martin Goodman had shell companies going back to 1932, which was he published his first pulp magazine. So Marvel actually starts in 1932 with whatever name of the pulp magazine was. I think I remember. Western Super Novel, I think it was.
Western Super Novel?
Yeah, I think it was that one.
Interesting name.
And then you have things like, let's go to Timely. Have you ever seen an official Timely logo on any comic books?
No. And in fact, the first logo you see on a comic book in 1948, it's Marvel. Yeah, lasts for about 9 months.
9 months. So you have like the not even famous. What would I even call it? The Legend of Timely Comics, and I never found an official logo. There is a logo drawn now. There's an Atlas logo drawn now too, but never really.
Atlas did appear on some covers. I don't know if you'd call it a logo.
For 7 years, for 5 years, from 52 to 57, it was the distributor logo. The Atlas distribution was a Goodman company. Before that, they were distributed by Cable News. You'll find in some 50-51 magazines a little K.
Let me see if there's one on these old Atlas Masterworks I've got.
Because I remember once being asked, can you find us an Atlas logo or a Timely logo for them to use? And it's like, I can't find one of those. It doesn't exist because they never had an official logo as far as I could tell.
There's the Atlas logo.
Okay.
Yeah. For the distributor. Although officially that was the distributor logo. Remember when the Marvel magazines in the 70s had a Curtis circulation logo?
Yeah.
And for a while, all of us thought that Curtis was an imprint for the magazines. But there was no imprint. It was just they were all Marvel magazines, and that Curtis was just a distributor.
In the 90s, I was still pasting Curtis code little CCs on the cover with the had to make sure that was each comic had its own distribution number when it went through Curtis. Which is another one of the reasons we had to strip that off for the direct edition, because they didn't need a Curtis code logo and distribution number on it.
And the only thing after the Atlas implosion, they stopped using they actually got rid of Atlas distribution almost a year before the Atlas implosion. That's when they went with the guys who distributed Playboy. That was which were I can't remember the name. There are moments during the day when I remember all of this by heart.
Was that the one that was
Mob owned? And
reading about it in the Comics Journal that Martin Goodman owned the distribution company, and one of his vice presidents talked him into selling it, and that's when they went with the other one that was mobbed up.
Yeah. The guy's name was the real creator of Marvel. The one that of the Marvel of what becomes Marvel. Without him, Marvel does not exist, and nobody, and very few people know his name, and most comic fans have never heard of him. Marvel's vice president of operations, magazine management's director of operations, Monroe Freilich Jr.
Now, was he the one who convinced him to sell, or was he the one who didn't want him to sell?
He was the one who convinced him to sell.
Okay. Oh,
I think what I suspect is that he had connections to the other distributor, which was mobbed up, and he would get a cut out of the distribution.
Evening Comic Cracks, the Drive at 5-ish comic book crew. Evening all.
We are a comic book zoo, yes.
My first comic I have to show this week is a conversation piece comic, because once again, you know how just last week we were talking about bidding on something on eBay, and going, I'm not going to get it. I'll be outbid. Well, I got it, and it's a CGC'd 7.5 of one of my favorite comics, Hate.
Ooh.
And the story that goes with this popped up when for some reason I was looking for Hate. One of my favorite comics. This is a comic that I think should be worth $500, because it's that good. But this popped up. I think it was originally $45, shipping included. Nobody wanted it. He lowered it to $35, shipping included. Nobody wanted it. So then he put it on an auction. And this is some comic shop somewhere too, when I say him. Put it on an auction starting at like 99 cents, I assume, plus $10 shipping. So he's going to get a shipping money in that one. And I was like, I'll bid $15 on it. So I bid $15 on it and won it somehow. So with tax and shipping, I ended up paying $27 for Hate #1, which I already have. But now it's also, I think, we discussed this. I can't remember who said it on this channel, where first, when I was saying, I think it was about the Crossfire #1. And I was like, there's a 6.5 Crossfire #1 out there. Who would send in a 6. Who couldn't look at their comic and say, this must, and somebody here said it, that it was probably somebody's favorite comic that they had in their home collection, and they were just sending it in just because they loved the comic. And then the guy probably died, and his Hate #1 went to some random comic shop somewhere, and I ended up with it. So this is probably someone's well-read favorite issue of Hate #1, like it's mine. So I find that, because looking at it, there's a bit of that white is a little dirty. So with the cleaning and a press, I bet we can get an 8.5 with it. That'll never happen. But I now have another conversation piece, CGC here.
Yeah.
Just noticed,
ended up with it.
Like, I had noticed a discussion popping up on Facebook of people talking about how they cannot sell any of their CGC books.
Oh, I've seen that.
There is no market.
I think there's a market, but it's not what it used to be in terms of, I don't know, when did cleaning and pressing get big? Maybe 5-8 years ago, I started seeing a lot about, that's when a lot of people I saw on YouTube started cleaning and pressing books. And what they would do was they'd get if this was like $100 book at a 7.5, they'd buy it, crack it open, clean it and press it, and send it back in and get it, a 9.2, and all of a sudden we'll go from $100 book to a $250 book. So I think a lot of people did that to the point where there's not that low-hanging fruit isn't there anymore. It's not easy to find books that haven't been cleaned or pressed.
Yeah,
that
add
you
to
can
that,
bump up and grade on.
Yeah, add to that, our CGC is no longer is no longer considered reliable by most of their usual customers after some bad experiences.
Yeah, there's that too.
So it was interesting to see that going on where, it reached a point and then fell apart quickly. And, I own one or two CGC books. I never went out to get them done. It was more of the sense of I'd rather sell the book and let somebody else slab it than to send it to slab. But I've been there. I've signed some books and watched the CGC guys like witnessing the signing. And one of the guys at some point was like, "Oh, I got to deal with this," and he runs off and he leaves his kid to continue to watch me sign the books, which is fun, I guess. But it's like, really, this is the whole CGC thing where we had to wait 20 minutes for this guy to show up so I could start signing the books. And then it's like, he looked at his phone and he had to run off, and it's like, all right, so I guess the kid is watching me sign. Well, not like a young kid. He was probably in his 20s, but it was just like, my son's going to watch it. And he walks away. It's like, all right, I'm still signing these, aren't I? And it's insane how, that it's a business.
Yeah.
But is it needed?
I think it's needed in terms of if you want to buy and sell Hulk 181, CGC is the way to go, because when the difference between a 9.0 and a 9.4 is $2,000, you're not good. The buyer and the seller are not going to see the grade the same unless a third party graded, because that's what always happened. You'd want to buy a Hulk 181 for 10 grand. But you take a look at it and you go, this is a 9.0. That's only worth 8 grand. And the guy selling it goes, no, that's a 9.4. It's worth 10 grand. How do you bridge that? The way you bridge it is with CGC. But if you're buying a hate number 1, you don't need CGC. I mean, this is like I said, I paid $28 for this version of it, which means it's probably a $10 comic, $20 comic at most. But if I were to argue in condition over somebody with this, we'd be talking about $3. But when you're talking about thousands of dollars, that's where you need it. But people were trying to flip CGC books. People were trying to get 9.8s on brand new books. I don't know if that slowed down or not, because I think very few people care that much about 9.8s on new books, because every new book is just like when you watch YouTube of people getting their books back from CGC and they got a whole bunch of brand new books graded and one of them comes back a 9.6. It's like somebody stole their candy. They're just like, oh, a 9.6. It was a 9.6 is like valueless of a new book. When a brand new book that came out 3 months ago is a 9.8 and goes for $100, everybody's like, and the 9.6 goes for $30 where you don't even get your money back. Everybody who gets the 9.6 is like, So I think that probably has a lot to do with it too.
Right. So I think there may be way too many people were doing that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of what was going on in the 90s. Everybody buying 3 issues because they thought they were going to be able to sell them and get big bucks for them.
Oh, I didn't know this one. Comic Crack says there's now CGC Banana Gate going on. Sealed so tight that it's curling the comic inside. Whoops. Someone at my local Facebook comments who just got a back of 9.9 slab. Wow. They had to give people something new. The 9.8s are nothing now.
Yeah. 10 point. They're going to start guaranteeing 10.0s.
Wow. Guaranteeing. Oh, when you send them in a case? Hello. Helps everyone's win. Did you pick up that new Frankenstein comic, Wilson? I know you like the Black Lagoon one. Uh-oh. Do you have it there?
Matter of fact, I picked it up today.
Look at that.
I picked it up, and funny enough, I was like, "Oh, someone's going to get in trouble because he has the bolts in his neck." And that's a no-no for the Frankenstein. But then I realized
it is licensed.
But I realized this is licensed through Universal. So it's like, oh, these are definitely Universal licensed, so it's perfectly fine to use it. And for some people who don't know, Frankenstein's monster in the original book mentioned nothing about the bolts. That was something done by the Universal Studios when they did their own Frankenstein monster. So yes, Frankenstein is in the public domain. The monster is in the public domain, but not the bolts on the neck. That was one of those things I found out when I was like looking up what monsters can be used.
Are those technically supposed to be electrodes? Because I know someone always corrects someone who's like, "Oh, the bolt's in his neck," and someone always goes, "No, those aren't bolts. They're, I don't know, electrodes or something."
I don't know enough of that part of the lore.
I don't think they're actually bolts, but I can't quite remember what they are.
I guess they're not actually bolts that we would think of.
They hook up like the electricity to it.
Probably. That would make sense how the electricity gets to him.
In the movie, I think that's
they have a lot of stuff from the movie, but here is
wow. See, the electrodes should be 62 Lefty Blue says, "Does that mean I have to take the bolts out of my neck now?"
Only if you're doing a Frankenstein's monster book or comic.
Wow.
So I did pick it up, but I did not read it. It's credited to Michael Welch is the writer artist of the cover. It is colored by Tony Marie Griffin.
Welch
and
or
lettered
Walsh?
by
Was that Welch or Walsh?
Walsh. Did I say
Walsh?
Walsh?
Okay, I think I know who he is. Yeah,
Walsh. Michael Walsh.
What was that? Let me get it big. Oh yeah, Michael. What was that? Silver something was the book I read by him that was good. That he was the artist and he had a different writer every issue. Silver Coin, that was it. That was good stuff.
I still have to read my graphic novel by Georges Best, which adapts the original novel. The monster does not resemble the Universal monster in any way. Although it does have a zombie-like appearance.
62 Lefty Blues knows it too. Silver Coin. And Tit Goblin says, I glanced at a magazine article at my LCS that interviewed a master grader. I know it's important to people, and it's probably a legit job. You have to have a pedigree. But that term, master grader. In the book, he's inspired by lightning to create life. So you're probably right, Jared. Yeah. Like I said, I think that's how it went in the movie. The like whatever electrodes were hooked up to his, and like I've heard people like correct other people when they call them bolts too. It wasn't like his head was bolted on.
No, not at all. I always knew that it was like it had to do with the electricity, but I've always called it a bolt.
Yeah, almost everybody does.
Oh yeah, so much so that I even had an idea for a character as that name,
neck bolt.
Yes, connected to that type of thing. So
neck bolt, the tyrannical.
But yeah, so I did pick it up. I saw it there, and it was like I grabbed it, and it was like, I
did that come out this week? Because I didn't see it.
I picked it up this week. I don't know if it came out this week. It was more because I saw it on the stands.
Yeah, and
it had it was right next to the. I think they had the trade paperback now for the Dracula one, which I still haven't picked up.
62 Lefty Blues says Young Frankenstein is zipper neck. I haven't seen Young Frankenstein in a long time. But I always say Igor because of Young. When I see someone at the actual name Igor, it's always Igor in my head from Young Frankenstein. So they changed the pronunciation.
Or you can have in the parody movies where it's Frankenstein.
That's Young Frankenstein's Frankenstein.
Ding.
And then Igor says, "Well, my name's Igor." That reminds me, I have my iPad with me to show you something digital I read this week. Since I'm back to commuting, the semester started. I was reading some comics on the old iPad, and where is it? There we go. This is the Matt Wagner and Kelly Jones Dracula that just came out. It was kickstarted. There's the cover. See if we can get you some. Which way are we going?
The other way.
Wrong way. Come on. Not that way. That way. There we go.
Whoops. You got to install a comic cam like Heller Mouse does.
Yeah. As soon as I got it up, the page changed. I actually have a comic cam I could install. So some nice artwork from Kelly Jones. I think it's how many? This is volume 1. They have they're 4 planned volumes. And this issue, I think they kind of want to. It's not really an adaptation. There's a nice decapitation shot for you. They some nice Bernie Wrightson swamp or forest. They're telling the story from Dracula's point of view in terms of. Let me move that phone. I forgot to move it. Bum, bum, bum. Robocall. Where's it? Whoops.
It looks like there are 6 covers to choose from, but I only saw the one. They even have one in black and white, so it's kind of like the movie type of thing. So they're the covers that they have.
Lois, lots of covers on things these days.
Mm-hmm. I do like the black and white one. It is nice, but this is the only one that I saw on the stand. That's the one I grabbed.
That was a pretty cool cover. But Dracula here, what's the name of it again? Like, this is volume 1, and they're planning on 4 volumes. And like this volume is sort of the origin story, and it's the story of the actual historical Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, and he's in the middle of fighting the invading Muslims, and he's about to lose a battle, and this is all about his kind of adventure in the middle of the battle, going to try to get more power. So he's going to make a deal with the devil. So this is all his journey to make a deal with the devil. That's what volume 1 is, and it's pretty well done. I enjoyed it. How did it just disappear on me? Did I accidentally delete it? Where's the cover? Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's just called Dracula Book 1. I got this on a Kickstarter. It's Matt Wagner, Kelly Jones, Dracula Book 1. Pretty good. It'll probably be available everywhere soon. I actually, Kickstarter is the most expensive way to buy comics. So I probably paid $15 for the digital version, which was fine. But to get like the physical version plus shipping was probably more around $35 or $40. I was just like, no thanks. I'll stick with the digital version. Because it wasn't something I was dying to read. It wasn't an issue of hate. So pretty good, like I said, pretty good comic. Enjoyed it. Haven't seen Good evening, Liz, like show and tell.
That's kind of what I'm realizing the internet has become. I was on TikTok, and I'm doing some stuff on TikTok, and I realized we're either doing book reports or we're doing show and tell.
Yeah.
And that's basically where we're at this point. It's like, and the kids who are really good at doing those types of things are the ones that have the full show. Because I was doing a video on, how I clean my action figures, and I realized it's just a show and tell.
Yep. That reminds me, speaking of people who are good at that, the new Bad Ink Studios book came out. Once again, have you actually read I know you follow the guy on TikTok, Bad Ink Studios.
I have yet to read any of his books, but I have followed him.
This is Interdimensional number 3. Whoa, trippy.
Nice.
Some very nice artwork. And this one, what's the guy's name? Let me see here. Evan Schultz. I actually discovered this comic on TikTok too. I was just going around TikTok one day and he popped up, comic book guy, showing you how to make comic books and showing you his comic book. Interdimensional 1 and 2 were out those days. You could click on the link. And what was good about it was I could use Apple Pay to get it. So I think the first 2 issues were $4 or $5 a piece. I may have got a deal because I bought them. But digitally, it's like, $4 or $5. This one I think was $4 digitally. And so far, all 3 issues have been really good. They're sort of close to a Twilight Zone-ish stories. I think this one actually had, and how many pages is this? 56 pages, and maybe the lead story is 40 pages or so, and then there's a couple of backup stories by some other people. But the lead story is really good. Lydia Roberts is a really good artist, I have to say. And I think Evan Schultz also, Evan Schultz, script, colors, and letters. He gives a lot of lettering tips on his TikTok. He does. Mm-hmm. And Lydia Roberts, layouts, pencils, inks, and sound effects. So he shows you himself coloring and everything. But really, all 3 issues have been strong. I call them Twilight Zone-ish horror stories. Like this one was kind of about how would I describe this? I think it's a world where you can enter into sort of some AI alternate reality zone where you can be whoever you want to be, and there's commercials in the middle of it. All of a sudden, they kept popping up commercials for this hot sauce. Oh, where'd that go? There's the hot sauce guy ruining her immersion. But of course, things go wrong.
Right.
It's like a Twilight Zone-ish with a bad ending. There's no twist ending. Things just go bad. There's more of a stray bullets ending horror story. But I've enjoyed all 3 issues of Interdimensional. So, like I said, you can pick them up digitally for $4 or $5 a piece, and they read really well. And like I said, you can use Apple Pay to get them. All you have to do is go to TikTok, look up Bad Ink Studios, and it's like you buy it all with your fingertip. Pretty wild.
That is great, and also very bad for my wallet. If you make it so easy.
Well, that was always the entry point. What do they call them? Or the not the entry point, that microtransactions.
Right.
In order to make things profitable on the internet, they were kept for years trying to invent microtransactions, where I could give you $1 for someone, or someone could pay $1 for their daily newspaper. But since our credit card system infrastructure is designed to funnel all the money to the credit card people, microtransactions weren't very affordable, with a credit card company taking a huge chunk of your transaction. You know, that is actually the impediment to microtransactions. And usually how they get around it is something like Apple Pay, where technically you're doing a microtransaction of $4, let's say, and technically you're not paying it right there or then. It goes into a big pool with other microtransactions or all other transactions you've made, and it pays it later on so that the banks can still take their money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tricky, but it's easy to use Apple Pay to buy that. So I enjoyed it. He also makes good videos.
He does. He does make good videos. It's like, part of me was like, when I was starting with TikTok, I was like, well, maybe I'll do some videos on, how to do lettering. And I see this guy doing it, like, he's doing a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned stuff from him. And I've been
Yeah.
lettering for 20-something years. And
Oh, yeah.
he would say something that's like, that's a good idea to get to it, to do. So I forget what it was, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh, yeah, that would save me like 2 steps.
I learn things from my students all the time. I learned something in Adobe Illustrator from one of my students this week. The Command W command, which I didn't know existed.
So what does it do?
Let's say you're making a balloon. You make a balloon with a 2-point stroke. That means the stroke is 2 points all around.
Right.
If you hit Command W, Command Width, you can now, which I don't know when they put this in that 2-point stroke, you put like a point right up here and then pull it. And your 2-point stroke now has a bulge up here or down here. So you can make all your strokes bulge in somewhere, change the shape of them entirely. I was like, wow. I never knew you could do that.
I knew you could do that with some other stuff on Illustrator, but I don't think I knew you could do that on the surface.
Yeah, no,
on the balloon. But I know you could do it. You were able to do it on the line, and I know I did it for some kind of effect I was going for, where it's like, oh, I can modify the thickness of this.
Right.
But I didn't know you could do that in an enclosed.
Yeah,
that's good enough.
Yeah, because Command W for Command Width, or is it Shift? Might be Shift. I think it might be Shift W. Oh, Paolo's back after dropping out.
Oh, okay.
He didn't like our Adobe Illustrator talk. He's like, I've had enough of this.
They're talking production. I'm out of here.
Just fell off again. At least it wasn't an earthquake. We had an earthquake on Monday.
Oh wow,
really?
earthquake.
Oh. Yeah. 5.3.
How was that?
Wow. 5.3.
5.3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Woke me up at 5 in the morning.
4, you could feel it.
Yeah.
I think you get up, or I think we talked about this before. Earthquakes are geometric too, so it's not an arithmetric progression. So it's like you would think that the difference between like a 5 and a 7 was 2 points. But it's not really. It's like double and then double. So it's like the difference between like a 7 and an 8 is the difference between a bunch of damage and catastrophe. It's like because as you go up the scale, it gets worse at a greater pitch. Kind of. It's really weird.
And I understand, like, even though we have earthquakes all the time, we don't feel it until after it hits. It has to go past a 4. In order for us to kind of register it, that anything's going on. The one that we had in New York not too long ago, I was out doing laundry, so I thought a truck might have gone by. But I did feel the shake. But I'm also in a laundromat where all the machines are shaking.
Right.
So like, to me, it's like something felt weird. It didn't feel exactly right, but it didn't feel like it was anything to be concerned of. And then 2 minutes later, realized that was an earthquake.
Yeah. It's funny. I didn't feel that one, but my sister upstairs did.
Okay. Yeah, because it was subtle. And I forget what that number was, but again, it has to be past the 4 for us to feel it. So you had a 5 point what? Paulo?
5.3.
5.3. So any damage or anything like that?
No, turns out we were pretty lucky. Nothing happened because we've had a couple of smaller ones that cracked some walls here and there, but nothing major.
Okay.
Another comic I got off of eBay this week, not quite as dramatic as bidding on something and then going, I won that? Because I just paid for it, was I picked up Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, issue number 1. This one cost me altogether with shipping and tax $9.08. On one of Wilson's TikToks this week, he was saying, I bought this toy for, he's like, I got it for, I think, $15 off of eBay. And he was like, some people always give you the shipping and count the shipping in it too. I don't always do that. I'm like, I always count it. Shipping and tax, I'm paying those. That's how much it cost me.
I go so back and forth on it because I hate paying for shipping in general. You know,
I think people do that just for their own peace of mind.
Yes.
To go, you know what? I didn't pay that too much for it. I only paid $15. Meanwhile,
exactly. I paid $15. That's how I make myself feel better. It was like I really spent $15. So again, I go back and forth. I dislike paying shipping on some items, especially if the item is over a fairly large amount. If it's over $50, I don't really feel like I should be paying shipping.
Yeah.
Just because it just seems like I know how much a person is getting from it, especially on eBay. I know how much eBay takes. You know, you have an idea how much a person may have bought. If they bought it when it first came out, they may have paid $5 for whatever it is, whatever item it is. And then for them to turn around and add the shipping on it and add the wrong shipping. Because, again, the burden of knowledge is that toy should not cost $9 to ship. That's a $4.50, including the supplies to wrap it up. That it's like you're pocketing that extra money.
I just don't want to give you that money. But
he'll say that it's something like, "Oh, I had to spend gas to get to the post office."
That's not my problem. My post office is walkable, so don't tell me you got to spend gas.
Besides, you guys live in America. Your gas is cheap.
That's right.
Exactly.
This one is the series that I think I jumped on with issue number 3. Ended up being a 6-issue mini. But this is one of those, I think Boom Studios put it out. One of those this one's IDW, pardon me. This is one of those books that got really hot really fast. So the first issue of it shot up to like $40, $50. And I think even the other printings of it were gone by the time I jumped on. Maybe even been issue 4 that I got, and then I got like a third printing of 2 and 3. So I said, well, let me go back on the go back on eBay and see if it's come, because now that the series is over, it's not as hot anymore. Let me see if I can get a copy of it. And sure enough, it was pretty much still up high, $20, $30, maybe $40. Too much for me. Like this one was $9.07 altogether. But I saw this one, and like I said, there's multiple printings of it. And I was like, the guy wasn't even saying what printing it was. But I was like, you know what? I don't care for $9. I don't care if it's third printing. I just want to read it. So I ended up getting it, and the first thing I did was look, and sure enough, it's a third printing. And then I noticed, I went back to print out a receipt for it, so now forever I'll know how much I paid for it. I noticed he didn't have first printing, second printing, third printing, but he had the UPC number at the end of the name of the auction. So it's like you had to be in the know to know that the last number of a UPC number tells you what printing it is. And I was like, oh, he did tell me what printing it is, but I didn't, because sometimes eBay places put their own item number at the end of their title, for themselves, so they can tell one from the other. So I just probably saw the numbers there and figured that's what it was. But when I went back to look, I was like, oh no, that's actually a third printing, because it's got after the title of, it's not on the receipt, after the title of, oh, there it is. It's got Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, number 1, cover F, and then it's got 00113. And that 3 is third printing. The 1 is issue 1, the other 1 is cover 1. So I don't know why it says cover F. And then I was like, oh, he did tell us it was a third printing. I just didn't notice. Because after that, he's got another. How many digits is this? 5. He's got an 11-digit number after everything, which I assume is his code for keeping track of things. But Kirwan's Game Store. But yeah, I'm glad I finally got issue 1 of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. Great psychological horror. Ape. What do you think aped is? AIPT. There's Horvath is the guy who does it, and Atzmain Elhau is the letterer. But what AIPT is, I don't know.
It's someone who's an expert on horror, I guess.
Or it could be 4 initials that stand for something, like a website.
Yeah, maybe a podcast or something.
AIPTcomics.com.
Ah.
Let's see if they tell us what their name means. Oh God, what? They use one of the annoying cookies pop up, which I have to get rid of.
Yeah.
There are cookies pop ups which are more annoying than others. About AAPT.
Owned by IDW.
The started as a blog named Adventures in Poor Taste.
Adventures in Poor Taste. Okay, AIPT.
So if you're in the know of horror stuff,
it's funny. I didn't even look at this cover before right this minute. We've got, this is like the serial killer is making a diorama of his serial killing.
Oh,
this is the one that stars like funny animals, kind of stuffed animals. So that's the bear, and that's a duck that he's got strapped up like that with his throat cut with the red paint. And there's, I guess, his hand as he's making a diorama of his serial killing.
I like the watercolors on that cover.
Yeah, Adventures in Poor Taste. Wonder if there's any more on the back. Let's see. Nope, an ad for The Last Ronin 2. Here, we'll give you a little look at the artwork. Where was that page I just had? Not the page of cutting up stuff, the page of the duck. Oh, the duck is the... Here's some of the characters. So they look like old school illustrations.
Yeah, reminds me a little bit of Richard Scary stuff. Children's book author that did those Big Little People books, I think.
And there is running into a real bear. That's pretty funny.
Well, you know what? That thing, that's what Wilson said. One thing that always upset me about the world of Richard Scarry was exactly what do these animals eat? Because they're all sentient.
Apples. I remember there always be apples. There was always one apple in every drawing.
That's because the worm.
Yeah,
because the worm was always eating one.
was always living in an apple.
We know what the worm was eating then, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it must have been apples all over the place. That's the only thing I could think
of. Apples.
A giveaway book a pamphlet is, did you know that Chip Zdarsky has his own newsletter that are
No,
giving out in comic book shops?
I had zero idea of that.
So
Is it
here
because nobody was giving him money for the Substack?
I guess not. Why is every comic book graded 9.8? How to pronounce distillery. Comics versus manga. Comics are winning if you look at the very specific scale chart. The next saga doesn't exist. Sorry. And it is just basically, I didn't get to read it, but he just is a 2-page newsletter or a self cover.
I'm going tape nuts. Chips tips.
And then I guess these are the books that he has coming out across the
Wow.
different companies.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. And then Chip's picks.
Huh.
It's amazing. And it's being given away for free.
What if he just mails them out to random comic shop?
Don't know. Self-cover. So it can't cost more than a couple of cents to make.
How many pages is it? Is it just
Just the cover.
just one sheet, 4
Just
pages?
one sheet, 4 pages.
Not bad.
Full color, bleeds.
First appearance of who? Who were the can we say it so we got first appearances in it? Let's try to pump this up.
Well, technically, I guess first appearance of Chip.
First appearance of Chip Zdarsky.
Yeah, in a comic format illustration.
There we go.
There's his where he's going to the next show.
Speaking of first appearance, I just stumbled onto something on TikTok today that was cracking me up. It started with one person making Wolverine fan art. But the fan art was, what if Wolverine was a butch lesbian? So it's just these drawings of Wolverine as a butch chick. And everybody was loving it. There were people cosplaying as it because it was an easy cosplay because it was the Wolverine and the tank top and jeans. So it was just like that. That just popped into my head with first. Now Marvel's going to have to cash in on that and make their Butch Wolverine. I think they were calling the character Butch Wolverine.
It's amazing. Were you on TikTok when they were going through? They were kind of basically making up a television show, and the gag was, "Oh, talk about this show as if it was your favorite show and what you remember from it." I think it was called Ships of the Northern Fleet or something like that. And then you have people coming up and saying, "Oh, yes, it was one of my favorite series," and they basically created a lore. It was amazing because people just kept adding to this thing where it was practically a whole series. And then you did have some comic book creators go, "Oh, yeah, I worked on the 6-issue miniseries. It didn't sell as well." And I think one or two people did do some drawings for it. It was quite amazing to see something like get created and then people having memory of this series that got canceled. It was their favorite series. It was quite wild to watch. This is my early days of watching TikTok where it's like, I was only watching. I wasn't really creating anything yet. It was like, that was fascinating to see it kind of like get created, have its day, and then disappear.
It really, what do they call that? The Mandela effect?
It practically creates the Mandela effect.
Have you ever heard that term, Paolo? The Mandela effect? It's dumb. It's people misremembering stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, completely misremembering. The one that's current right now is the Michelin J Frog. The lines to it. Yeah. And because they're the lines that they have from the cartoon and then what happened in Spaceballs. And they keep referencing it, but it's like there was another frog cartoon where it was Porky, it was affecting Porky Pig. He was watching the frog, and that may be where the extra lyric comes from, because everyone keeps focusing on the one when the guy found the frog. But there was a previous one where Porky found the frog. It's like it was the same exact story. They just didn't have the guy; they had Porky instead. And it was like, if you watch enough Looney Tunes, they recycle the jokes all the time. They just change maybe who was the art director.
There's one that I've seen brought up a couple of times, that Sinbad, the comedian, played a genie named Shazam.
Oh yeah,
Right.
that one comes up all the time.
That one comes up all the time too. Yeah.
But it's Shaq playing Kazam.
Right.
Yep.
Sinbad played a member of the Secret Service in a comedy where he was tasked with protecting the president's son. And those two movies came out at the same time, and that's why people conflate the two.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that there was an internet channel that pays Sinbad to create a trailer for a movie that didn't exist, just to mess with people even more.
And that just reminded me, I read this week, which I bought last week, I think it was, Houses of the Unholy, the latest Phillips and Brubaker joint. They've been putting out these hardcover graphic novels rather than comics. So you don't have to make the choice between being the sucker or the asshole, because this is your, get this, because it's not in comics. But this, I'll read you the back. Houses of the Unholy is a riveting horror thrill ride. An FBI agent from the cult crime beat and a woman with a past linked to a satanic panic are drawn into a hunt for an insane killer hiding in the shadows of the occult underworld. And how this ties into the Mandela effect is, the lead in this was like, by the way, I don't know if Paolo's, do you know what the satanic panic of the 1980s is, Paolo, over here in the U.S.?
The 1980s, was that the one about Dungeons and Dragons?
Not quite, but that was tied in.
It was part of it.
It was part of it, but all of a lot of it was like nursery schools and such, who all of a sudden people started believing that there were satanic cults everywhere. And it even got to the point where, well, what was it called? Repressed memory syndrome, where small children would go to psychiatrists and remember being part of some cult where they were sexually abused and there were babies killed and all this stuff. But it was really the psychiatrist putting this stuff, or whatever they were, therapists putting this stuff, they weren't all medical doctors, putting this stuff in there. Rather than them remembering something, they were being taught it. So, and people even went to jail and offed themselves, and also, I mean, it was a real thing, the satanic panic of the 1980s. Well, the lead of this was a little girl in the 1980s, and she was one of the kids who was involved in the satanic, and she made it up. She and these other kids, and one of them was their leader. And she said about the memory thing made me think of this, because she said something like, I told the story so often that I now have memories of it. He's like, did it actually happen? No, but it still gives me PTSD, because she remembers it as if it happened, because she told the stories of when she was a kid. And that's what happened to all these kids. They were coached kind of. It was one of those things where they'd go, oh, and did you go off into a dark room? Yeah, I went off into a dark room. Oh, and then were there scary people there? Yeah, there were scary people there. And this went on for years before it was debunked. So in this one, it's the story. She's an adult, and of course she's a bit of a mess, especially since she had a mother who was one of these loony far-right Christians who believed in the satanic panic even when her daughter said it didn't happen eventually. She still believed it. And her father died young. I think died because he didn't believe. She was like, my father should have my father just should have left, but he didn't because he didn't believe in divorce. And then he had a stroke when he was 43 and fell down and died. So then it was just mom, my brother, and I. And, she had a hard life because her mother was a loony. And she couldn't live down. It was tough to live down that she was one of these little girls, because, she was all over the news when she was a little girl, and people still think of her that way. So it's all about her trying to live her life, running into this FBI agent who's in cults and thinks that something from her past is coming back to get her, kind of. And there's no real supernatural element in this one, like there is in a lot of their other stuff. Like, what was that one? Ooh, I can't remember the name of it. They've got one that's starring this woman, like the damsel. We're supposed to be turning the damsel in distress on its head, so it's got a name like that. But I can't remember what it was. But there's no actual occult in this, just people thinking there's an occult kind of thing. But people are scary. So, and it's got a really kind of different ending. It doesn't have a normal happy ending. Not that the ending's particularly sad. It's kind of up in the air a little bit. Not in terms of will there be a sequel a little bit. Just an interesting ending. I liked the ending. But another good. This might have been my favorite Brubaker and Phillips in a few books. I really enjoyed this one. And I think his son, Sean Phillips' son, was coloring it too. Jacob Phillips, yeah, who's doing comics on his own. Still not. I still liked Elizabeth Breitweiser's coloring better, but his coloring was good. Mm-hmm. What 62 is left people say? What's the Satanic Panic around the same time as they were pushing explicit? That was a little bit before, but they're probably linked. I remember that being like a little bit before, but I there was probably overlap.
Yeah, because it would be like every time something got really popular, it had to be something bad about it. So I think that's how Dungeons and Dragons got caught up with it. That's how the wacky packy stickers got caught up with it, because it's like, oh, look at these gross stickers, and the Garbage Pail Kids are the worst thing to ever happen. And then every time something got really popular, TikTok is now the bane of all existence. Comics was there for one time, and that was fun for comics. You can't read comics, it'll rot your brain.
Yeah, you know what made them get tired of comics? Elvis. Elvis got popular. Elvis got popular, and then everybody was saying that rock and roll was devil's music.
Yep.
But of course, rock and roll is not devil's music. Rock and roll is old people music.
Now it is. Yeah, Tipper Gore. Tipper Gore thought she ruled the world. As a matter of fact, it was our friend Bunch. I've known him since college. He was the one who was always into out there fringe stuff. And there's one of his favorite bands was called The Mentors. Mentors, with their lead singer El Duce. And all their music is crazy, filthy rock and roll. And Bunch discovered them because in the congressional hearings where they were trying to get explicit labels on rock albums, Tipper Gore read some of the Mentors lyrics. That was what made that's what made Bunch interested in them. And I think they said something, the Mentors actually, maybe on an album or maybe in some paper somewhere, actually thanked Tipper Gore because she made him famous. Nobody knew who the Mentors were before Tipper Gore wanted to censor them.
Amazing.
Streisand effect.
Yep. Exactly.
The Mentors. They make catchy music though. It's dirty and filthy and sometimes you'll find yourself singing along to it. It was one time I was like, oh, I can't do that. Early 90s. Got my Walkman. Bunch made me a mixtape cassette of a whole bunch of songs, and the Mentors were on it. Now I remember walking up. I was walking up to Port Authority bus station to take a bus home, and I'm like singing along with the Mentors. I'm like, oh, am I saying that out loud? I can't say that out loud. It's that kind of stuff is in their lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had a punk group in the 80s. Turns out it was only 10 to 12-year-olds who liked them because they had one song which was a hit. The title was "My Mother-in-Law is an Ox," and it was the first time that they heard dirty lyrics, including me.
Yep,
I'm from that generation.
Like, let's see. Speaking of that generation, oh yeah, Tipper would have loved G.G. Allen. I also heard of G.G. Allen from Bunch.
That's where I heard from him from.
Who was super filthy. That oh my goodness! All of a sudden, his name flew out of my head. Our viewer who died, who did that comic on G.G. Allen, in the house. But what's his name? Isn't the? Oh my goodness, his name flew out of my head. Hold on, I have to walk over.
We'll get his comic.
Okay.
There we go. Tales from Rock and Roll, starring G.G. Allen. King Spoet. There we go. There's a G.G. Allen who was a regular viewer of ours who died. When did he die? Last year sometime, I think.
I believe so.
King Spoet is in the house. He would always write as he came on. We don't have so many viewers that we can lose some to death. That's not good.
Not at all.
Not at all. I also got Penthouse comics this week. It actually came out last week, but there was the owner's son was the only one in the store, and he forgot to give it to me because the magazines on your pull list are in a slightly different place. And let's show you the stories that are in it. These top 4 are the stories. Then there's some. I think they're all continue, and they're all European. Penthouse is all European comics that has some sex in them. Hence, I guess it could be penthousey, but it's not particularly, racy. It's not a porno comic.
No, it's just a European comic.
It's just a European comic.
Just a regular European comic.
Yeah. Which is what I wanted, which is why I'm enjoying it, because that's what I wanted to read. But it continued. Like I said, the first story, Gun Crazy, we're finally. I'll give you the story so far breakdown. And it's funny because they're all European comics, and they're all about the U.S. race. 2 of the stories are about race. One of the stories about the Deep South, the craziness of the Deep South. The Deep South sure has its characters. First, there were Dolly Sanchez and Lenoya O'Brien, lovers and women of color who take their crime routine all across the South. Then there was Super White Man, a real piece of shit that truly believes he watches over America and protects the Second Amendment. In the last chapter, we meet John St. Pierre, who's preyed on as a young child and is getting revenge against the pedophiles, and Sergeant Nolte in his getting revenge against the pedophiles. And he's not getting revenge against Sergeant Nolte. And Sergeant Nolte and his pet dog, Country Joe Fish. So those are all so far I've had like one chapter each about those characters. Now they're starting to crash together. And so we've got Deep South stuff there and racism in Super White Man. And then in what's the name of this one? The Dead All Have the Same Skin. This is the one that's about race because it's about a black man who can pass as white. Part 3 of 5, living in New York City, but he's living in New York City passing as white, but then his brother shows up who can't pass as white and starts wrecking his spot. So it's about him, and there's all sorts of stuff with he's got a white wife, but he can't sleep with her. He's got to find some mixed women to sleep with to get him to attracted to it. So there's all sorts of weird racial stuff going on in his head. And then we've got what's the next one? Oh, this is the one that just finished, part 4 of 4. This one doesn't really have race in it. It's just kind of weird. It's about this guy who was kind of a low-level sex performer who was trying to get his big break, but then this criminal lord's daughter took an interest in him, and he couldn't go to Hollywood to get his big break because he had to stay and take care of this crime lord's daughter. And until she wanted to get rid of him, he couldn't go. But then there's this character, the tattooed woman. There's like a supernatural aspect to this one. I forget her name. But there's this tattooed woman whose tattoos move. And I guess she's got some sort of superpower because she ended up screwing this other guy to death as part of the plot.
Death by snooze.
Yes. And let's see, what's our next one after that? And after that, we have another racial one, which is I Spit on Your Grave, which I think is an adaptation of a book, right? Someone said
it's a movie of that
name.
Well,
it's not the movie. I know that.
Okay.
I think it's a book. It's a famous book by somebody. I just don't know who.
Yeah. Most people do write books, so it must be by somebody.
Well, AI writes books now, but they're just not famous.
Well, you said it was a good book, so it's something different.
But once again, this is the one about a mixed race guy who's passing as white. And he wants to go and get revenge on some town for lynching his black brother. He's got a brother who couldn't pass for white, who got lynched for being in love with a white woman. But we're not anywhere near that plot yet, because first he's on that journey. He's taking a sojourn from that journey. And for those of you who don't know what sojourn means, it isn't a synonym for journey. It means to take a break from a journey. So you sojourn someplace, like you can sojourn in Berlin on your journey to Beijing.
So the fancy word for layover?
Kind of, but usually you say I sojourned in Berlin for 2 weeks, meaning on your way to somewhere else you stayed in Berlin.
Right. Okay.
But people, it's misused so much because people like to use it as a synonym for journey. Oh, I took a sojourn to New York City. It's like, no, that's not how the word works. You take a journey to New York City. You don't take a sojourn. But people like to sound fancy, so you know. But in this one, on his way to getting revenge on that town, he wants to get revenge, or he wants to take advantage of these 3 white women who live on a plantation. He's getting revenge against all of society by getting revenge. And I think he's even planning on killing at least one of them. So it's I don't know how he's planning on getting away from it, but he's a good-looking, charming guy, so he's got all 3 sisters interested in him. And then I think that's the last. But liked them all. You know, I'm enjoying this. If you want to read some European comics, this is about the only way I know to do it these days. I don't see many of them here over in the U.S.
Well, not in that format.
No. Do see some in the shrunken down format.
Yeah, or maybe large graphic novels that you have to go to a bookstore to maybe see if they have one.
Yeah.
There's an interesting graphic novel that's coming out in France next week. There's this Dutch artist M.A. de Jong, and one of her comics is available in English. Days of Sand, and she's got and the next one is another novel adaptation, which is something that's fashionable right now, and she is adapting Lord of the Flies.
Ah.
And the graphic novel adaptation has more pages than the novel.
Well, I would think so. You can't do one page of novel and one page of. I don't think so.
Yeah, but usually they shrink it down.
They do. You're right. They do. But I don't necessarily think that helps. But it's a lot of work drawing a novel.
Mhm.
So usually, due to economic reasons, they shrink it down. Like in the Gatsby graphic novel that came out last year, they cut out my favorite scene. So it's kind of like, I find that annoying.
So you did a whole 16-page chapter on it, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Oh, and here, 62 Lefty Blues says, I made a bet with the guy at my LCS that Penthouse Comics wouldn't get past 10 issues. I believe 11 issues was our over-under.
I think that's what it was. I don't remember exactly, but
and I'm pretty sure all of us want the under on that.
I was betting on 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think I was aware what kind of what kind of stories they were at the time.
It depends too on if those European publishers want to break into the American market. They might be giving that stuff away for cheap just to break into the American market.
Mm-hmm. Because the traditional big publishers, they don't really care,
right?
Or they already have someone in America like NBM who does their stuff. But in the last few years, there's a bunch of new publishers who are really taking risks with stuff, and sometimes you see foreign editions of their comic, but the countries where they're published don't make any sense, or at least you expect a certain book to be published in 8 countries, and so you expect them to appear in the countries with the largest population. But then you have some that this one comes out in France, but it gets published in Poland and Serbia, and then it appears in Spain because the Spaniards nowadays publish everything, but you don't see it in Germany or Italy. Which is kind of weird because it's those smaller publishers that are picking up that specific graphic novel.
And I didn't think of it till right now, but the first 2 issues were bragging about how many copies there were sold. 3rd issue had no such editorial saying, we're in good shape, don't you worry, we sold 30,000 copies. So I don't know how many copies they sold of this 3rd one. But I like the cover on this one, the cheesecakey cover. And like that, and I enjoyed the stories too.
So looking it up on Wikipedia, the I Spit on Your Graves is a French novel that pretty much sounds like the comic book story itself. I think the comic story is a adaptation of the original book.
Right. Not the American movie.
American movie.
Which, once again, I know of because of Bunch. Want to show us another comic, Wilson?
Yes. So, facsimile edition of Transformers issue number 1.
Oh, that's right. I saw that coming out from Image in Skybound, right?
Yes, so Skybound is the original cover to issue number 1, which was originally a 4-issue limited series. This is a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. Completely out of scale entirely, but it was enough for me to pull it off the rack, back in New Rochelle in 1983 when I first bought the book.
I actually bought that one too.
So I remember seeing it, not knowing anything about it, maybe even before the cartoon.
Yeah,
I don't
because
remember. It was around the same time, I guess.
because Optimus looks like the toy and not like the cartoon.
Exactly. And even the artwork inside, they look more like the toys.
Yeah.
Because they were basically drawing the toys.
Yeah, I bought that first issue, and that was enough for me. I was too old.
That was it.
Yeah, I was probably 17.
If I remember correctly, I think this Budiansky wrote it. No, Bill Mantlo was the plot. Ralph Macchio scripted.
Yeah, because Budiansky was the editor, right? He stopped editing so he could write it.
Original series editor. You are correct, sir. Frank Springer was the penciler, and it was inked by Kim DeMolder, if I'm saying that correctly. Colored by Nell Yomtov. He was an editor.
Became an editor at Marvel.
And lettered by Michael Higgins and Rick Parker.
They needed 2 letterers. Wow, they were behind on the first issue.
There was a lot of text in it too. There's more text than a Claremont X-Men in it. So
yeah,
so because they were describing the whole world.
Yeah, no, I mean they have over 30 new characters to present in. Yeah, look at that.
Look at that, and they were drawn like the toys here.
That's a lot of text.
So yeah, they have to explain all of the backstory in Cybertron. Then they have to explain how they get to Earth. Then they have to introduce each and every one of them.
Wow.
It was the toy
and
line.
Then there are humans.
Yep. And there's the 40-year banner.
40 years of Transformer. And that hearing Ralph Macchio's name reminds me. I saw a lot of photos of Ralph on my Facebook feed because he was at that Connecticut convention.
Mm-hmm.
First time I think I've seen photos of him at a convention.
It's been a while. The last time I would say I seen anything with Ralph was the cameo he had in one of the Thor books, in one of the Thor movies.
Wow.
There was a table, I think it was in the second movie. There was like a dinner table type stuff of all the gods, and Ralph was there.
Simonson
Walton Weezy. Yeah, Walton Weezy was there as well. And Ralph was in a little corner. It was actually pretty cool to see them all there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like, I guess Ralph's going to cons now.
Yeah.
That's good. So he was there with some, I know some, I think Terry Cavanaugh was there. I think he just started doing cons again. Bob Budiansky was there too, I think so. They were all editors at the same time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Cavanaugh was not a very good writer.
I can't say whether he was or wasn't, but I believe you. A lot of those editors who were giving each other writing work in the 90s weren't particularly good writers.
Mm-hmm. And
he's a nice guy, though. I think I should say that.
When Tom Brevoort started, he did start as a. He also had a few writing assignments, and he had a writing partner. Tom Kantarovich was that, and that guy disappeared.
Yeah,
and Tom just became an editor.
By the way, I don't know who's hacking my computer tonight, but that was just the second time I saw the Bluetooth mouse icon come up on my screen as we're talking when a Bluetooth mouse attaches to your computer. And I don't have any mouse attached to my computer. Someone out there waving a Bluetooth mouse around? Like, what's going on?
What's the nearest place to you?
There's no place near enough. I don't have to look. Where's my? I have a Bluetooth Bluetooth mouse that isn't working. Sure enough, it's hooked up. It's somehow. I must have left it on. This is it's a mouse that I used to use. I have my there's my desktop computer right over there. And I was using this mouse with it, but the buttons stopped working. So I just kind of put it away and pulled out a wired mouse and put it in. And I've been using the wired one, but I'm like, how did this one I better turn it off automatically. I figured this was the only thing it could have been, but it's never been that before. Just hooked up to my computer out of nowhere, especially since it doesn't work.
Well, Skynet was supposed to go online yesterday, so maybe that's it. It was stuck in your.
It was in 1997. Okay, that's what appears in the movie, 1997, when the internet was slow.
Are they gonna do all 4 issues of the miniseries as facsimiles, even though it just kept going?
I don't know. I haven't read the book, so I didn't see anything that said it was going to.
Well, if it's a facsimile, it probably would be.
They probably can't do number 3.
Yeah.
Well, no, they can't do. Yeah, unless
number 3, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man's in issue 3. Yeah,
I don't draw them.
They just make another. They could probably stick one of the other Skybound superheroes in there. Yeah. You know, do with they did that with Superman and Shazam.
Put Invincible in there. How cool would that be?
That would be good. They just you could almost have the same story. There's not really much going on. It wasn't really about Peter's life. It was just a way to introduce him into the introduce the Transformers into the Marvel universe, and that was the only thing they really ever did.
That's fun. That just reminded me of. Did you see the video that a comic shop owner did that kind of went a little viral in the comic book world this week, where he was he did buying comics at his comic shop, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, how they come in and buy comics. But anyway, the funniest one was the Gen Alpha kid, who's this little kid. He comes up, his chin barely on. He's like, "Can I get some boys in Invincible comics? My mom said I could read them."
I did see that that video. That was funny. Yeah, I did see that video.
The Gen Xers have got to explain to the kid. What you do is you wait until the shop owner is turned around. You stick the magazine inside your jacket pocket, and you walk inconspicuously to the door.
That reminds me of one time back in 97 and 98 when my friends and I were publishing our comic. We self-published a comic, an anthology between all of us. And my friend John was doing a horror comic. The Fetid People, he's a horror fan. So it was a real adults horror comic. And we were doing this it was a good con that used to be in a local high school. And often like the guests would outnumber, the actual people who came by, because like everybody who lived in the area and in New York City would go to this con. It would be a big social event for all the people in the comics. However many guests showed up, that was whatever. But I was just, we were manning the table selling some comics. And I just looked over and I see John selling the comic to like this 6-year-old. And I'm just like, and he picked the one with John, the cover John drew was like of this vampire guy with a human heart on like a stake, holding it like that, all bloody and gory. And John was like, yeah, he looked like he could handle it. Somewhere a kid got really into horror because of that comic.
Or not.
Or not.
Or not, yeah.
My friend my friend John he became a horror fan when I think his grandmother or grandfather, I forget which one, took him to see The Exorcist when he was 6.
I was taken to see Blackula when I was probably 4 or 5, probably 4. And all I remember was just that it scared the bejesus out of me because it's a vampire movie, and it was my mom and at that time, or the guy who was going to be my stepdad, took us to the movies, and he was upset that I wasn't watching the movie. It's like, really? This is what's bugging you? Is that you spent money on this movie? I did not want to go see this movie. I watched it through like in between the chair because I was hiding behind the chair. And it was like he loved watching horror movies.
Yeah.
I could not stand horror movies. And it even got to this like there's it wasn't until probably last year that I found the name of a movie that also scared me as a kid. It gave me nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the Incredible Melting Man or something like that was the name of the movie. And all I remember from that movie was the guy getting his arm chopped off and the arm still moving across the kitchen floor. I had replaced that memory with the arm looking different, the kitchen looking different. It was when I watched it, or I watched the clip of it, it's like, oh, that's not all that scary. But as a kid, that was so frightening that to this.
No, they changed that movie, mister. They changed it. The Mandela effect. They didn't want you to know how scary it was.
And the weird thing about it is like that I could trace because of that memory how much I dislike arms being cut off in movies. So in Star Wars, almost every movie that someone's getting his arm cut off was always disturbed. Even to like there was an issue of Eternal Warriors, the Eternal Warrior, his arm was cut off. So that cover was censored. So it had like a black cover on it, and it had a warning. And when you switch it over, the arm is cut off, just like the Wampa's arm in Star Wars. I saw that, and again, chills because it's like that repressed memory of that one horror film, and it's like it's incredible how, and like I said, that movie scared me so much that I had nightmares about it. So when I tried to remember the movie to describe what happened to it, completely different when I was describing, because I was actually describing one of the dreams. But again, the hand being cut off and moving across the floor.
The one thing I remember scaring me as a kid was a PBS production of Peter and the Wolf. I don't remember anything about it except a wolf chasing a little boy around. And that's what scared me. The wolf chasing the little boy around. I was like,
And it's like, so every now and then I try to see if I can find whatever movies kind of scared me. And there's one that I think was a made-for-TV movie, or it was just a movie on television that I cannot to this day figure out what it was about. All I can remember from it, that it had a kite that I think looked a little bit like a dragon. And I guess it's because they had music with it and a little kid being scared of it. Mm-hmm. And that's all I remember from it. And it's like, it was something that would have been in the late 70s, just touching the 80s. Don't know what it was. All I just remember is it was just kite in the sky that kind of looks a little bit like a dragon's face and nothing else.
Once I started reading superhero comics as a kid, things didn't scare me anymore because I would be like, come on, the Hulk would squash that guy like a bug. Come on, that guy couldn't even take out Spider-Man. Come on.
And then whatever horror comics came up, there was like they weren't only one I ever read was scary, but they were never really scary.
There were no horror comics when I was in the set. I hear people refer to like Marvel and DC horror comics of the 70s. It's like, no, we called them mystery comics because there were no horror. There was no horror in them whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before. They're more like thrillers.
Yeah,
and the only one that ever I found when I read that I found that was disturbing, and it was more sad than anything, is that it turned out the boy in the attic was a ghost. That was, and I don't even remember the comic after that. It was just like one of those like, oh, that's sad and scary, but yeah,
you've been dead the whole time. I was just watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is one of my favorite shows. And I was just watching a little clip of one of the characters in it going, talking about M. Night Shyamalan and going, yeah, in that movie, The Sixth Sense, the twist at the end, that guy in the toupee. It was, his name just flew out of my head. It was
Bruce
him the
Willis.
whole time. Yeah, it was Bruce Willis the whole time in that toupee. No, like that wasn't the twist. That wasn't the twist. What? Tit Goblin says, I convinced my parents to rent Michael Caine's The Hand because he played a comic cartoonist with a severed hand that killed people. It's about a drawing teacher. I remember that one. That zany one. Not the hand transplant that would make him murder people. That wasn't particularly scary. I don't know what year it came out, but it didn't. Let's see, another book I got this week. Monstrous, issue 54. And this has just been really good lately. Because that's our lead character, Marika the Half-Wolf, and Maika the Half-Wolf, Maika. I always want to call her Marika. That's Wolverine's girlfriend, isn't it? Or is it Mariko?
That's Mariko.
Maika.
Mariko.
And she's like some sort of royalty, and she's got this elder god monster that lived inside her. She has to control, or there's all sorts of stuff going on with that. But in recent issues, her father, who's an SOB and also wants to take over the world, and they're having all sorts of wars between the various kingdoms and stuff. Her father stole somehow got the monster out of her and put it in him. So now he controls the monster, and it gives him power to run his army and conquer things. And then she and her crew disappeared for 5 or 6 issues to this other world for whatever reason. And then they came back a few issues ago, and this war is running full tilt, and her dad is mopping up the floor with people. And she has now got to try to get her monster back. But it's just kind of crazy. There's so much intrigue in politics and all sorts of fun stuff going on in this fantasy world. I've really, really been enjoying it for for this story arc. So Monstrous continues to be really good 54 issues later. By Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. Which reminds me, I still have to read the second volume of Night Eaters over there by then. And there won't be another issue until it says, what does it say? Monstrous will return in 2025 with issue 55. I wonder if that, because another comic, of course, I got this week is Saga 68. And I know hiatuses have really killed Saga's sales momentum. I've read that a million times from a million different comic shops. I wonder if hiatuses have hurt Monstrous's sales in single issues at all. Or does it sell enough for anyone to even notice? That question came to mind as I saw that. Because I know the hiatuses really killed Saga's sales. I mean, they're still good, I assume. But
has Monstrous had?
Yes, they've had hiatuses before.
They had them before. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it of course doesn't affect me because it's on my pull list. I'm okay with it.
Right.
But I know other people who might pick it up off the shelf or get frustrated with it and take it off their pull list. That's what happens sometimes too.
I think Monstrous sells very well internationally. And since internationally they're coming out as straight paperbacks.
Right. The issues are just gravy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can understand that. This is a good. I wonder how it sells in Japan.
I'm not sure. It's one of the best. It's a consistently good seller in France. For an American comic.
Because I think both of them are Japanese. I know one of them, I forget which one, doesn't speak English.
I think it's the artist.
Yeah. Sana Takeda. So it's like I wonder if they sell it in Japan or not. I don't know. What do we've got here? Barry Winsor-Smith did the artwork in the hand, and it was directed by Oliver Stone. It should have been good. I remember it being rather bland and a little silly. But I haven't seen it in a long time. 19 or 20-year-old Jared thought it was a little bland and a little silly. And that guy hasn't been around in a lot of years. Got another comic for us, Wilson?
Yes. So from my pull list, the only one that was actually on there, a big size issue of Amazing Spider-Man issue 56 or Legacy 950, because that number is way bigger than the actual 56.
Wow.
John Romita Jr. cover, pretty thick issue. I'm thinking this is the start of the end for Zeb Wells on the run. So looks like we're back to Tombstone being the main antagonist of the story.
Okay.
And it's some great looking John Romita Jr. Spider-Man artwork. Other than that, I can't tell you anything else about it because I don't know anything else about it.
Now, I wonder, you mentioning the 950 or what is this? Which 956 did you say?
It's issue 56, but Legacy 950.
Okay.
So that means issue 1000.
That must,
is 50 issues away.
That must be, because I'm trying to think. Issue 56 means nothing. I guess in terms of the sales of a Marvel comic, issue number 950 somehow means more than issue number 56. Because usually they're like, ooh, big numbers might scare away readers. But I guess 950 is a big enough number that it makes it important.
Very much so, because there's an article in here written by Nick Lowe, the editor, talking about, can you believe it, 950 issues.
Yeah.
So they're focusing on that. And here's a bonus on the back that might make you buy it, or maybe not, because they're the size of a stamp, but there's every single Amazing Spider-Man cover.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And it looks like, so it's so far it's all the Amazings. Yep.
Yeah.
I was just seeing if they might have added the other covers as well, but it's all the Amazing Spider-Man issues.
I have to show you these just because you mentioned, the size of a postage stamp. I got these toys this week that I was surprised at how small they were, but I'm having a lot of fun just kind of with the way they're built and handling. They're Funko Itty Bitty Pops. Here, they sell.
Oh, they look like they're small. They're smaller than the they do sell a small Funko Pop.
Yeah,
that's
they're about
bigger than that.
And this is the Friends one, $15 for the 4 of them. But I like it that they come in this stackable cube that you push your thumb in the back of, and it pulls them out. And these right here, these boxes are not paper; they're plastic pieces. So that's a piece of plastic. Then there's 2 tabs down there. You can pull out the tiny little character. You can even flip the cube over. And since there's 2 notches on the side, and stand them up on there too.
That's pretty neat.
And flip them back under, and they go back in here. And when I first got them, I was like, wow, those are really small. But I've been having fun with how tactile they are. Because like I said, you push your finger through the back to get them out. Whoops. You push, you grab so I've just been like sitting in my chairs, and I find that I found them surprisingly meditative because I'm a fidgeter. So I just kind of sit there and fidget with them. They're built well enough that they feel good when you take them out. They've got enough weight to them. They feel good when you take them out. They, grab the two little tabs, take them out, just kind of stare at. I like, fitting them. They're pretty good fidget toys. So I was surprised at how much I liked these. Not even being a pop fan, really. So, except for the ones I paint.
Right. You think you'll paint those?
No, they're way. I
honest,
could never paint those.
At that size, it would be more interesting to collect Funko Pops.
Yeah,
and those things are gigantic. No, yeah, all of a sudden you have 100 of those, and where are you going to put them?
Yeah, they take up no room.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the people who collect pops have already finally understand that they have no room for them, and that's why there are. I know that there are stores which are complaining they can't give the new ones away,
right?
Because the people who have 1,000 don't know where to put them.
The ones I've painted, I've gotten for like $3 on Amazon. Those are the ones that they clearly nobody wants. If they're selling them between $3 and $5 on Amazon, then nobody wants them. And also, when you collect pops, now you got to get a plastic case to keep your pop in too. So that drives up that'll probably break some people after a while. But this one, the case is already plastic, so you don't have to buy any. You don't have any protectors for these. By the way, I've got a pet peeve I want to talk about too. Since I got this conversation piece, I hate CGC plastic bags, like the bags that you put your CGC slab in. It's like, what? They are so ugly. Look, it's like I got one, and I never keep them in the bags. Because the bags look so ugly. They make it ugly to handle. They're ugly to look at. And I'm like, but people insist on using those bags to not damage their cases. And I'm like, the case is there to not damage your comic. now you need something to not damage the thing that's there to not damage your comic? That's how much of objects CGC slabs have become. Because you want to protect you don't want to protect your comic. You want to protect your object with another bag. And I'm just like, oh man, I hate those bags. Matter of fact, I think it was at my LCS. Was that at my LCS? In the section with the comic book bags are 100 slab bags. I'm like, holy cow. But those really annoy me when I have to handle a slab, so I don't keep mine in them.
The whole concept.
That's not going to be the most ridiculous thing. There's going to be we're going to have a Russian doll of protection for comics.
Yeah.
Right, because have you seen the CGC comic boxes to put them in?
Oh yeah, I got one.
They have recently, like tabs to like but those slide are just because them into the boxes.
Oh, Wilson just kind of froze.
Right. So, but how many comics or slabs that fit? Is like 25?
Probably. I don't know.
Would you used to be able to use a short box?
Right. I actually got a collapsible CG comic box just recently, just because I'm like, I need a place to have them on hand where I can look through them. Because I just had them tucked away and I could never see them. I'm like, if they're going to be conversation pieces, I can't have them tucked away. Oh, we got a question for Wilson here. We'll have to wait till he comes on again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I never thought I would like after seeing how tiny they were, I was very disappointed. But now I was like, wow, I can't believe how much I enjoy looking at these silly little things.
What exactly are those? Are the characters from Friends dressed at?
You see, they had to get I've noticed in a lot of the Friends toys they have to do things like one time for Halloween, Chandler Bing was dressed up like a pink bunny. Because otherwise, you're right, they don't have costumes. They're just wearing clothes. This was one job Joey had. He was dressed up like a white cowboy to spray perfume on people. So they dressed him up as a white cowboy. The same Halloween. This must be the Halloween one. The same Halloween, Ross was dressed up as Sputnik, a potato in the Sputnik satellite. So there he is in the Sputnik. Otherwise, you'd have no idea it was Ross from Friends. And that same Halloween, Monica dressed up as Catwoman. So I've noticed they do things like the way they always dress. Have you seen the show Friends?
I don't like it.
Well, there's one episode. There's one famous episode, famous scene with Joey, where he says something like, "You won't give me my shirt back or whatever it is. I'm going to do the complete opposite to you." And they're like, "What the heck is the complete opposite?" And Joey walks in and he's wearing every single piece of clothing that Chandler owns. So he's got like 9 shirts on, 12 pair of pants. That's what they choose to make a toy out of all the time. So they've got Joey in that, just a whole bunch of outfits on. So I noticed they make that one with Joey a lot. So that's what they do. They find episodes where they actually dressed up as something and put those out. Because otherwise they look like nothing.
Yeah. One that I would probably like to have if they ever decided to do those would be Cap's Cookie Quartet. Cap, Hawkeye, Wanda, and Pietro.
They do have Marvel Biddy Pops, but I haven't seen that one.
But that one would be fun, I guess.
Let's see, what else did I get?
I got to see the Cap's Cookie Quartet on the unanimated show way before I actually read those comics, because they used the Avengers stories in the Captain America cartoon.
62 Lefty Blue says, if you didn't see it in previews, you wouldn't know to order it, but I picked up the Sacrificers giant-sized artist proof edition in glorious 11x17. Wow, it's about 40 pounds. I don't know the Sacrificers. I know, is it one of those Image Comics artist proof editions? Like, I've seen them do those, but those are usually like Treasury edition size. They're not 40 pounds. They're 11 by they're like original art size, and they're just the inks. 40 pages, not 40 pounds. 40 pages. Yes, Rick. Oh, maybe I did see that one, but I didn't know what the Sacrificers was. They're not quite like artist editions, because they're really just the black plate. So you get to see the inks. But I haven't picked one of those up yet. I keep meaning to. They've done them for different things. They're about $20 or $25, right? So they're not especially expensive or anything. But yeah, I didn't read the Sacrificers, so I didn't. Who drew the Sacrificers? Oh, you can see the blue pencils too. Okay, so maybe maybe it is more like an artist edition, or maybe it was drawn digitally and they turned the. Often artists draw in blue pencil, even digitally, and then ink over it. So maybe they did that. I will have to look into it. The Sacrificers. Max Fumara is the artist. Okay. I don't think I know him. Do you know him, Paola?
No. But Andrei Maraujo is drawing it now.
Ah. Rick Remender's had a lot of books.
I don't read most of the stuff that Remender puts out, but he is not afraid of trying out new concepts.
No, he isn't. The one I'm reading by him right now, Napalm Lullaby, is really different. Tit Goblin says, picked up a Classics Illustrated Bill Sienkiewicz Moby Dick today. Such a great mixed media artist. Yeah, he did that for First. Was that at First Comics originally?
It was part of the first line of Classics Illustrated with the modern artists.
So I think somebody also reprinted some of those in the 90s. I'm not 100% sure of that. I have a vague memory of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not really sure. We got the French edition right here, which is big. And big is always better.
Yep. It is. Bigger is better. Let's see. Also got 7 Years in Darkness, Year 2, Issue 2. I forgot I had gotten Issue 1 already. I thought this was Issue 1. By Joseph Schmalke. And this is the one that takes place like in a wizard school that shows up every 100 years and 100 students join and only like 6 survive. And this one is all about that cat right there is a familiar. And he's really some sort of magical creature trapped in a cat's body and is a servant to the wizard school for a certain amount of time. So that the cat's going around, and it mostly stars a few students we know. And he's going around trying to help out these students because the teachers who run the school really don't, they're kind of like, it's part of their philosophy to not help the students learn magic so much, even though they're teaching them magic, which is a dangerous thing. They're like, hey, they got to learn on their own. But the cat's like, I'm trying to get these kids to survive. So it's really an episode about this cat helping out the kids. So it was fun. I enjoyed Joseph Schmalke's work since I discovered him a few years ago. And it's a CEX comic, which I forget what it stands for again. CEX Publishing. CE, and then the X is a different color.
So the X probably means nothing.
Yeah. I think this was, who was it? Was this an Andy? Is this Andy Schmidt's? Yeah, Andy Schmidt is the president and publisher. He's someone he was an editor at Marvel back when I worked there. But a nice comic. Good stuff, eh? Good stuff. What? Cover A. And a $5. You know what? I noticed it says, because it's a cardstock cover. And I noticed it says in my final order cutoff, sometimes it says, usually like DC has their regular self-covered, and then they have cardstock covers. And the cardstock, I made balloons go with my number 2 again. And the cardstock covers are $1 more. So if you buy a DC comic, the latest issue of Batman, you can get with the regular self-cover for $4, or pay $5 and get a cardstock cover. And this one is $5 with a cardstock cover. And it says in final order cutoff email I get cardstock cover. But there's no self-cover. I'm like, you would think it would only say cardstock cover if there was a choice, but there's not even a choice. So I find that a little weird. But I like a cardstock cover. February 1990, first edition. I guess that's his Dick. Yeah, I can't remember if it was a few years later or not that they, because I keep forgetting when first ended.
91.
Because it's like I stopped buying First comics long before First ended, I think. I'm not 100% sure. Was like Nexus with First to the end.
Yeah.
So it's
They
like
did
that.
80 issues, and at least the first Hammer of God miniseries.
So that would have been on my pull list. So I would have got that automatically. But there was a time like in the late 80s, I was probably buying half a dozen First comics a month. Probably by 1990, 1991, I don't know how I was buying Nexus, and I don't know whatever other legacy books do they still have. Was Badger still around at the end?
Not sure.
Yeah, I think I may have stopped buying Badger too in the 50s, and I think it went up even higher than that. So I may have stopped buying Badger. It's like when first, so it's like I thought, because as a fan, you could tell First was in trouble because they used to kind of be cutting edge indie comics, and slowly that tapered off. Till I think when they finally went out of business, I don't think anybody new was looking to start a comic series with First.
Yeah, I think
Wonder if an earthquake.
Okay, so Dreadstar was still going, Nexus was still going, Grimjack.
See, I didn't buy Grim. I wasn't on Grimjack. I wasn't on Dreadstar.
But John Sable, it was the second series, the one that was not made by McGrail.
I wasn't on that one, and that's how you can tell First was in trouble too. None of the original creators were on their famous books.
Yeah, these Dreadstars were the one that were the ones that were written by Peter David. Nexus at this stage, Steve Rude was long gone. He did the covers, but that was it. Badger was still going on, but I guess it was repetitive. No, I don't know.
I was probably off Badger by then too, because
yeah, I mean, you have he's zany and murderously crazy.
Right.
It gets tiring after a while. I mean,
yeah,
like, you know what, the Punisher was probably a good newsstand comic in the sense that you didn't need to buy every issue of the Punisher. You just, if it was an ongoing storyline, you pick the comic, stayed with it for a few months, and then there would be a fill-in artist, and it was a good opportunity not to buy that comic. And I guess, but the Badger's a more personal thing. But if it becomes a one-trick pony, although I suppose Nexus it evolved at this time, but I guess it had veered too far off of what it was supposed to be, and it was too soap opera-y, too much of a soap opera, and maybe it got hard to get on board.
Yeah, I remember the Nexus was the one I was still buying because I think it had Steve Rude sometimes, and other people, and I wasn't a huge fan of the issues without Steve. I'd have to look without Steve Rude, but still I stuck with Nexus, but I didn't stick with any of the other ones.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I quit Grimjack with Tim Truman. Like you said, I probably got tired of Badger after 50 issues.
Yeah, Whisper ended about mid-90s. Yeah, the in 91. Let's see what happened in 91. So the last forget.
As a matter of fact, Whisper, I think I was off Whisper too, because back when mycomicshop.com first opened, I decided to go back and fill in the whispers that I had missed, which were a few issues here and there and probably the end stuff. So like, I want to reread that series. And finally got them all, was set to reread Whisper, and I made it through 2 issues. And was like, that's enough for me. I don't want to reread this series anymore.
Okay, so let's see. By early 90, by late 1990, everything is getting canceled. I guess I guess they were probably not paying the creators, because Dreadstar is over in November with the March 91 cover. Nexus goes to January 91. Badger ends in November 1990. Then they try to do a new book in March, a new number 1. Okay, Grimjack ends in December, but they still have a Mudden's Bar annual in March. Lone Wolf and Cub is canceled in March 91 as well. Yeah, they put there's 2 issues of the second Hammer of God miniseries, and they just dump a bunch of classics illustrated, which are already made.
Wilson's trying to come back. There he is.
Okay. The last one is...
And that's why Spider-Man is the way it is.
No, I'm the one who's having trouble with the computer.
Then the last one is, what were you saying, Paolo?
Let me see.
We're talking about the end of first comic.
Illustrated as soon as Max Amazing World starts. Yeah. The Jungle by Peter Cooper.
I don't think I ever read that one.
Because
to me, the conversation was, to me, I was wondering what year First Comics ended, and it said 1991. But to me, like, I stopped buying almost all First Comics except Nexus by probably about 1990 or 1989 even. Because it's like, you know, as a reader, you could tell they were in trouble for a couple of years because none of their big creators were there anymore. And we have a question for Wilson from Tit Goblin. We were waiting for you to come back. Wilson, can you give an educated guess at how many times as a Spider fan you've seen him reboot and or the stories revert back to the start again? Well, I don't think they really reboot Spider-Man that, except for Ultimate Spider-Man. See, the thing about Spider-Man was what made Spider-Man special in the very early Steve Ditko days, and I've said this before, is he was the first superhero on a hero's journey. He was a young kid getting powers. He had to go on an adventure and learn his power. And eventually, when he lifted the machine, that was kind of the end of the hero's journey. And that's what made Spider-Man special, is that hero's journey, which is what they keep replaying over and over again in the movies. But by the time Wilson and I were around, Spider-Man was just a sort of straight up standard superhero.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say the first time that I noticed it, that there was something different, is when he got the black costume.
Right.
Because to me, that was, superheroes didn't change their costume. So for me, that was a wild thing to go through. And then reading stories before that, they was like the villain of the month or whatever.
Right.
Kind of a thing would happen. Every now and then, Doc Ock would show up, and then he would seemingly get killed off, and then he would show up again. That was the trope with Doc Ock. And then, so I would catch on to those types of things. It was like, oh, this is kind of repeating itself. So there were many repeats, but as far as reboots or anything that could be considered a change, or I would say a change in status quo, was the black costume. After that, after the black costume, he kind of like stalls out again, gets quiet, and then McFarlane comes in, and that becomes a big deal. Right. In that case, and then again, it kind of goes back to status quo of different heroes and villains, different guest artists comes in. Eric Larson pops up for a little while. That changes Venom more so than Spider-Man. Then the next big change, or difference, not change, is the attempt to do the Clone Saga, which would have been a great idea a year after the original Clone story. And you found out for the last year, we've been reading about the clone. That would have been the greatest thing ever. Not 20-something years that, oh, the guy that has been Spider-Man my whole life was a clone that was just too much.
Right.
It was
that
an
was a
interesting
planned
concept
that they bailed out on.
they bailed out in the middle of it. And I was there when they were talking about, because they were trying to get, because when I was at Marvel during the Clone Saga, that was when I was working in the publicity department. And so the concept was going to be Peter and MJ goes, Ben Reilly shows up, and he was Spider-Man all this time.
Right.
But they chickened out because, again, I thought it was an interesting idea, but I was like, it was just way too long of a time period.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that just would have been crazy. Now, if they could have brought, which they kind of tried to do, was to bring a new Spider-Man.
See, that's how
Ben Reilly. That's how they eventually got to it.
I think that's also the only way to reboot Spider-Man, because, like I said, Spider-Man was a teenager when he was starting. So if you want to reboot Spider-Man, he has to be a teenager again. And you can't really do that. Hence, Ultimate Spider-Man. Hence, Miles Morales Spider-Man. Hence, all the other Spider-Mans they got when they make them teenagers again. Because you can't just make Peter Parker a teenager again.
Yeah, I think that would have been a mistake. I think at that time, if they needed to do a reboot, if they should have introduced, they really should have just. My idea was that if you wanted to use Ben Reilly, you could have reboot Spider-Man, which you could reboot with like the next generation of heroes and have Spider-Man be their mentor. That would have been the next logical step for Spider-Man, was to be a teacher to another set of superheroes if you wanted to continue a story for Spider-Man. But so you had the shake up in the and what went on with the clone story. Then it's kind of status quo, and around that time is when they're getting ready to do, like, so they hit issue 400, killed Aunt May, then brought her back. Then John Byrne finally gets onto Spider-Man, and it's not the wish we wanted. It was what, wanted Spider-Man, John Byrne on Spider-Man forever. And then he comes in, and it just doesn't go anywhere.
Eric P says Spider-Girl should have been the focus with Peter as her mentor. Like, Spider-Man might be the hardest character to actually reboot because you can't make him a teenager again.
Right.
And they just start giving him teenagers in his life.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see, J. Scott Campbell years are pretty. Then John Romita Jr. comes back. That's where I feel like, yeah, you're starting to kind of bring back Spider-Man's story. 9/11 obviously happens, and that affects everybody's life. And does the thing start rebooting from there? And how do you tell superhero stories when like real life is getting crazy? Then not much else is going on. By then I'm away from Marvel. Civil War is going on, and that just nothing really new there. Although it was interesting that Spider-Man was with the side with Iron Man, but that was about it. But that's just story that they need.
And the answer to that question, Tit Goblin, is no. Is there any Marvel or DC character that ages like Savage Dragon as one continuous story? No, because they're not characters; they're intellectual property.
Right. You can't, if we don't get it on a T-shirt or a lunchbox, then they failed. When Doc Ock was Spider-Man, that made something different in story-wise. But that's the body swap, so that's a trope, really. I don't know if there's anything other than the occasional, a new writer and artist comes in for a little while, a change of a costume, but we've seen that so many times. So yeah. I don't know if there's any real big changes. And even now, for the last few ones that I've been reading, they seem to want to always put Spider-Man in a position where he's not with Mary Jane. And every time he's just about to get with Mary Jane, it gets pulled from it. So Spider-Man has fallen into a trope of, not knowing what to do with him. And we could kind of see it with the movies because every movie has been really his origin, or every relaunch of the movies has been the same origins again.
They want to keep him an eternal teenager in the movies.
Right.
Which is the way to go, but actors grow.
Actors grow, and sometimes it's like, there's certain things you don't want to see again. Like, I do not need to see Batman's parents die again. If I see that again, I'm going to become Batman. Because I've just seen it too many times. I'm glad in this last iteration of Spider-Man, we don't get to see Uncle Ben die. I don't need that trauma again.
Mm-hmm.
So is that one? To answer the question, no, I don't think you can try to do a reboot. I don't know.
I don't think there's many Spider-Man reboots. They just create a new teenage character.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man, the idea that Spider-Man is supposed to be a teenager, that's not what happens if you read the first 4 years of Spider-Man. Steve Ditko designed the character's continuity in order to reach an ending, which is something that comics didn't do.
The hero's journey.
Right.
The hero's journey has an ending. The problem is
superhero comics don't have an ending. Yeah.
Right.
Which is why they always have to put them back to the beginning of that hero's journey. That's the problem they have.
Or he has to learn a new lesson.
Because once he becomes a hero, he's the same as every other Marvel hero, which is what Spider-Man was to me as a kid. He'd been way off that hero's journey by the time I was reading in the 70s, which is why rebooting him is so difficult.
Even in the 80s and 90s, you still had the old trope that, Spider-Man doesn't do well in groups. Spider-Man was by that stage. Spider-Man was probably the only hero in the Marvel universe who knew everybody else,
right?
Because of Marvel Team Up.
Oh yeah.
Which is why old-time Spider-Man fans didn't like Marvel Team Up.
Oh, I love Marvel Team Up.
I love Marvel Team Up.
I know
because of the fact that it introduced the rest of the Marvel universe.
Guys older than me point to the beginning of Marvel Team Up as the end of Spider-Man. That's what I used to read all the time.
Yeah, Marvel Team Up was the first comic books that I collected.
Eric P. says, reportedly, the Spider-Girl books would get popular with readers who had been the original Spider-Man readers who now had kids. Yeah, I know the Spider-Girl books were popular with librarians. That's what kept it alive. There also might be why Starman works so well with DC, with an aging Starman and now his adult son. Yeah, that happened. The DC does the passing of the torch all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Starman's a little bit different than in Flash. You always try to bring back the old Flashes,
right? Even
when you have a new one. Starman functions well on its own. It's its own continuity. It's not It's not directly related to the DC universe in the same manner. That's why the comic ends, and it's a good ending.
Oh, by the way, the Spider-Girl comment reminded me, I don't think I mentioned it here. I think it was 2 weeks ago when I was in the comic. I made the balloons come out and flew again. 2 weeks ago at the comic shop, for the first time, I don't know how long, there were two 10, 12-year-old girls there buying comics. I was like, whoa. Talking to them for a couple of minutes. The one, she's like, I stop by once again. I stop by once a month to guess who her girl is that she has to buy her comic. Scarlet Witch. Probably from the TV, the Disney show. So she shows up once a month, she said, to get her Scarlet Witch comic, which was only on issue 3. So I don't know how long. But I was like, oh, cool. Young girls in the comic shop buying comics. That's good. Don't see that very often.
Mm-hmm. No, usually just go for the Japanese stuff.
Yeah. And my comic shop doesn't have the Japanese stuff, very much of it.
But any comic store owner that says, "Oh, I don't sell manga," is just obviously doesn't love money.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, he'll order anything for you.
Even 20 years ago, and I didn't give a rat's ass about manga. If I owned the comic shop, do you like manga? Hate it. Do you carry manga? Of course, people want to buy it.
Well,
I'm here. If I have a comic store, I'm in the business of selling comics to the people that want them, not in the business of trying to force people to only like what I like.
Yeah, but enough.
But
people
you have a business mentality. Most of the comic shop owners at the time that I started in comics, they were hobbyists who decided, let's open a store. I think that's where the difference lies. And also, it's not.
They can't buy manga willy-nilly hoping people come into the shop to buy it.
Right.
No, and that's the other thing. The thing that nobody in comics knows how to do. Marketing.
Yeah.
We always go back to the not knowing marketing.
Well, it's also, like marketing a car that you start with a crank in the front. It's not easy. Not a lot of people want that. Not a lot of people want comics.
Right.
Marketing and distribution has still been the bane.
Although at this stage, it's probably good for the industry to go underground for a while.
Another issue of Rogue Sun came out this week.
Still going.
This is the one that's about the teenage superhero. A solid superhero comic if you're looking for an indie, and it's part of the Massive Verse, which is the Radiant Black universe. And there's a lot of characters created in this one too. In this one, Rogue Sun and some random chick who's also a superhero. There's some big bad villain in this universe. They're actually in another universe, but it's got some access to Earth. I forget his name. He's like the big bad villain, but he's off in the distance. But he kept sending people into our world to try to get stuff and conquer it maybe. And Rogue Sun was like, you know what? I'm going to go to his place and I'm going to mess him up. And so this girl who he's on the mission with is like, no, you don't. He's like, listen, I'm all for taking that guy out, but you can't. You're an 18-year-old kid who just got superpowers. So she takes him on this mission. And she's like, oh, yeah, you think you can take out the big bad guy? Try taking out one of his henchmen here first. And, of course, the henchman ends up kicking his ass a bit. So now he's not so anxious to go on a beeline towards that big bad villain. So good stuff. Rogue Sun's a nice, solid, like Radiant Black, completely different, but like it's a solid superhero comic, which is always good. And let's see, the last comic I got this week is a first issue. Convert with what's this guy's name? He's only doing the cover, but I like his work. Simon Gane, Gane. I've got some of his work. He did this cover. The inside is done by John Arcudi is the writer. He's been around a long time. And Savannah Finley is the artist, with Miguel Co, C-O, on the coloring, and Michael Heisler, old Marvel bullpenner, on the lettering, and Drew Gill doing production. I think Drew Gill has been doing production for Image Comics for a long time. I met him once, something like 20 years or something he's been working there. But some nice artwork. I'm going to definitely get a second issue. But this is the story of there are 4 astronauts who landed on this planet that can support life. I don't know what year it is, but something went wrong. The landing capsule caught on fire, killed 3 of the 4 astronauts, and this guy is left on the planet by himself. And he spends this whole issue looking for something to eat and not finding it. So this is a whole issue about him starving to death because he tried eating the local plants and animals and couldn't. Then as he's starving to death, look how skinny he is, and passes out, some of these locals find him. So this is how it ends with these, whoever they are. Let me show. I guess this is next issue's cover. These are the locals. So we'll see if he survives or not. But it was a good first issue. I enjoy. I don't know if you guys have ever read any of John Arcudi's stuff. What does he have in the back here? But I've always kind of liked. He wrote The Creep. This is one that ran in Dark Horse Presents. Dale Eagleshaw, and 4 long unavailable tales brought to life in a new edition. That's right. I think he also wrote Rumble, which I bought a bit of until the first artist left. 2 Moons, but he's always written some stuff I've liked. I kind of, it's like I've always kind of enjoyed what he's written, but I haven't gotten a ton of it.
I have the JLA storyline, the Obsidian Age, where they get sent into the past to when the Atlantean civilization is still above water, and they all die.
Yeah.
and I think people don't like the story very much because it's not typical,
right?
Especially because the Grant Morrison had already left a year or 2 before, but I guess people were still used to the style because Mark Waid did not veer too far off from what Morrison was doing. He just didn't have the crazy concepts, but the storytelling was not that different. And John Arcudi doesn't write like that.
Yeah.
Also, the artist was Mike S. Miller, which was at a completely different style.
Did you like it?
I liked the story. Miller's art was kind of limited. But the story, I think the story was engaging. It really did give you the idea that you didn't know how the JLA were going to get away with that one. Plastic Man was traumatized from it, which is not something that you usually think of.
Yeah, you don't think of superheroes getting post-traumatic stress,
especially Plastic Man.
Yeah, especially Plastic Man. The way he's been written as the comedy relief.
Yeah.
I think that was all. Do you have anything else this week, Wilson?
The one other book that I picked up mainly because I heard there's an Alan Davis story in it is the Marvel 85th anniversary special. So the one that I got is the Scotty Young cover, mainly because
I saw a bunch of those at my LCS. Yeah.
And so there are various stories in it. At some point, Kamala Khan becomes the Herald of Galactus. But there's an Alan Davis Excalibur story. Is the lighthouse haunted? So I picked it up for that, and because of the 85th anniversary, so wanted to see what was going on. Spider-Man's in it. The Spidey Buggy makes an appearance.
Ooh, look at that.
Ooh.
I believe there's also a Contents of Champions story in it as well. And Contest of Champions.
Wow, they're really going for it. Contest of Champions.
Yeah. Hey kids, do you remember Contest of Champions? No.
It's superheroes fighting superheroes because they don't have time to fight the villains. So who can beat who?
Can Defensor beat Shamrock?
So let's see.
Who's stronger, Tarzan or Flash Gordon?
That's not the Contest of Champions.
Five stories.
That was an argument by Alfalfa on Little Rascals. So it goes back that far.
Very interesting. So I picked that up, and I think those are all the books. So the only other stuff I have here is the DC Connect, which is the catalog book, and the one for Marvel. Like giant Doctor Doom in the background.
Now, are those free?
These are free. Yes.
It's previews that's not free?
Previews itself doesn't seem to be free anymore, but you could go online and download, I think, a PDF of a preview. Because I remember, depending on the comic book shop, I remember if you had a pull list, you would get it for free.
Right.
Oh,
Otherwise,
and IDW's Ninja Turtle account. So these are free. Since I get mine at Midtown Comics, there's like a portion right by the door where they have all the free catalog type stuff.
they have a free section.
Yes. I pick it up from there.
That's
But
cool.
those are the books of the week. And I didn't get any books off of eBay this week. Just a couple of action figures. So that's about it.
I did get another, let's see, Jersey sports card for $3. Wayne Gallman. And ooh, look, there's a piece of his jersey. How
Nice.
Exciting.
Uh-huh. A piece of cloth. Yay.
I don't know why these have been amusing me so much lately. Probably because they're so dirt cheap. Get them off of eBay for like $3 shipped. And just he was like a backup running back for the Giants. I got like what do I have now? About 8 of these now, pieces of jersey cards.
Nice. A couple of years ago for Topps, I did some sketch cards for Star Wars, and the item that they had that they were putting with these were pelts from the Ewoks costumes. So they sent me the cards without the pelts on it. So there's like a hole in the cards, and I got to draw, various. Mostly, I think I did C-3PO on it, and a little bit of Chewbacca, because I realized drawing fur in my art style and coloring it was just a hassle. That was like, oh, I cannot get away. Like when I did the Tarzan cards, I was able to do gorillas pretty well, and I was able to color them quite well, where strands of hair, and I could do the gorillas. I could not do Wookiees, and I could not do Ewoks. So it was like, all right, since they were worshiping C-3PO, I'm going to just draw a bunch of C-3POs. But it was pretty funny because I didn't get to see what the Ewok pelts were like. Were they sticking out of the card, or how they had it set up?
You'd have to develop a technique for that fur. The way I've seen it done, people pull it off. Usually with watercolor, you could do with markers as well, probably the same, is they draw the color of the fur first. So instead of like drawing the fur and then trying to color it in, you just block in big blotches of color for the fur and then draw your drawing over that, and it looks more like fur. I've seen people do that. I've never done it myself. But
I have to give
that
a
would be
try.
the technique, I think. I have to try that.
I was able to do it on the apes because I was able to do the feathering of the fur on the apes easier. Just because of just the nature of how the faces that I was drawing. I just could not mimic it later on the Ewok. So I got to give that a try.
Give that, and the people they would keep it loose. The fur, especially the watercolor people, they're really good at just kind of keeping it loose, and then the drawing over top tightened it up. Because the problem is you tighten up the drawing over the top, and then you try to color over that, and you can't be loose.
Right.
All right. Well, we better say good evening for the night. It's time for our ending time.
Yes.
All right.
So, and we'll say goodbye. And on that note, we'll say goodbye singing the Star Wars theme.
Star Wars.
Nothing but
Star Wars.
Ta-ta, everybody.